use this metaphor of the finger pointing at the moon. And if you were to experience, if I want you to experience the moon, we could talk about it, we could read a science article, we could sing a song about the moon, but the only way you're really going to experience it is if we point at it and you actually look and experience the moon. And I was saying last week that that's the most important thing about what we do in this next hour, is that you actually experience mindfulness. Last week, I think I broke my rule, because I think I did too much talking, okay? And a certain amount of talking is important because, again, like the finger that points to the moon, explanations and instructions can help us point our attention. But it's really important that you experience it. So tonight, the theme is that second facet of happiness. Last week was stress relief. This week is fulfillment. That in order to be happy, to flourish, we need to be able to reduce our stress. And tonight we'll focus on how do we create fulfillment in our lives, okay? So, before much more, let's go ahead and have a brief settling and check-in meditation, okay? So, if you want to just get comfortable, but sit in a way that you can, that your body can alert your mind to pay attention. So usually that's lengthening your back and maybe relaxing your shoulders, softening the jaw. And you can do this with eyes open or closed. Okay? And let's just bring what is said, to bring ourselves to the present moment. Letting the busyness of the day settle down. And when we're in the present moment, any time during the day or right now, we're either seeing, hearing, or feeling. So you might tune into your body. What sensations do you feel in the body? And there may be comfort or pleasant sensation or uncomfortable. Either one is fine. And that's feel. Now notice what you're seeing. If your eyes are open, notice what you're actually seeing. If your eyes are closed, notice that dark screen that we see when the eyes are closed. And just pay attention. And now lastly, you hear the sound of my voice. But notice the ambient noise, maybe traffic in the distance. Sounds in the room. Maybe your stomach is gurgling. That's a hear also. And notice the rhythm of the breath, in and out. So you probably have heard teachers, meditation teachers say, just be in the present moment. But I always found that to be a little vague. What does that mean? And I used to think, where else could I be? You know, unless I could bilocate to the future or go back to the past, I was always in the present moment. But if you use this model of sensory experience, is what we pay attention to, seeing, hearing, and feeling, then it makes it more precise. And you can always ground yourself in the present moment based on your sense experience. And when you think about it all day long, all you're doing is seeing, hearing, or feeling. And that includes thoughts and emotions. Thoughts can be either visual or auditory. That's what a thought is. And you can experience it right now. Picture your favorite food in your imagination. Can you see it? And notice where it shows up. We call that image space. And right now, I'm seeing a bowl of butter pecan ice cream that I had last night, and it shows up right here, this part of my brain. So we'll call that image space, and that's a C. So thought can be visual, but it also can be auditory. So recite silently to yourself your phone number and hear yourself saying it. And that's a hear. And notice where that shows up. For some people, it's between the ears. For me, it's right here. And our brains are slightly different, so it shows up when I hear myself talking. So here's the summary, that see, hear, feel out in the world, things in the environment, the sounds in the world, and the feelings of the body, the sensations of the body, including touch and smell. That's all see, hear, feel out. But we can also be aware of see, hear, feel in. Visual thoughts, auditory thoughts, and then bodily emotions. That's feel in. Because every emotion, whether we recognize it or not, shows up in the body. So any questions about that? Does that make sense? And it's going to be important that you understand at least some of that as we practice, because we're going to be using our sense experience tonight to do what the Buddha encouraged us to do, to be mindful. So this series, as I said last week, is I'm trying to put together our New Year's resolutions, those things that, and even if we didn't make resolutions, we all have some kind of personal goals. Put together the goals with the inspiration of the Buddha, what the Buddha, and particularly the Buddha Dharma, teaches us of how to live our lives, and then to add the modern science that is now informing how we practice, particularly mindfulness as well. So what I'm trying to do is put those together in this series, and as I said, tonight we're going to look at fulfillment as a second part of being happy. So what you might think about as maybe just a little bit of an exercise is if you made New Year's resolutions, how many people did? How many people have kept them thus far? Oh, okay, great. You're above the statistical average, right? Because most people make them and then 2 days later they're gone, right? So great. So, and even if you didn't make them, you probably have some kind of goal in your life of how you want to have more life. So what I would suggest is let's think about those goals or your resolutions in terms of fulfillment. Now, does anybody have an example of how your goal would give you more life? Anybody want to share? Yeah, man.
I don't really have goals per se, but I have themes, and one of my themes for the year is service. And by providing service, it does exactly that. It gives me more life.
Gives you more life.
Yeah.
Okay. So fulfillment, which is really there's different definitions. One is the accomplishment of something. We fulfill a goal to serve. But the other definition is appreciation. We can appreciate more of the things in our life as a form of fulfillment. Would anybody else like to share what your goal is? Yes.
Yeah, I'm not real big on the term goal, but intention works better for me.
Yes.
And my intention for this year is more courageous communication. And life gives those opportunities.
It does.
And it was interesting, stretching in that sense, being more authentic. And in speaking with a friend today, that I feel like communication has shrunk. And so it's just exploring what that might be, and it was very positive.
Yeah. So in what way is that fulfilling for you?
It feels like more authentic communication.
Yeah. Great.
And
Yeah. Anybody else want to share? No. So yes.
Yeah. Well, I guess I use the word goals, but it gives me something to look forward to, like a plan. I'm trying to. My goal, one day I would like to buy something when I leave the halfway house. So whether it's a house, whatever, buy something. So I'm planning for it. But yes, I know I'll get there one day.
Yeah.
That's my mindset. I don't get there one day. I don't get it. Yeah, it's something to look forward to every day, or at the end of the year, like, oh, I saved this much, or a few years ago, my goals were all over the place. I didn't really have any set goals. I just kind of lived day by day, and it didn't work for me. It didn't work for me.
Yeah. So whether we use the term intention or goal or resolution, it really is that attempt to have more fulfillment in our lives. As you listen to people's goals, or maybe your own, what's the one thing they have in common? What's the one thing necessary to achieve a resolution, goal, or intention? Yes. Perseverance. Yep.
And being aware and mindful that we're working on a particular thing.
Yeah. And you hinted at it. You have to pay attention. You have to bring your attention day by day to achieve those things, that fulfillment. Some examples in our lives could be that it's fulfilling to appreciate a good meal. It's fulfilling to appreciate the people who we love. To stop and pay attention. We know that to be true if we're going to appreciate the art in the world we live in, or the music. So the one thing that is in common for all fulfillment is we have to develop the skill to be able to pay attention. And often the term mindfulness, although it's much more complicated, but often we talk about mindfulness as the ability to pay attention to what we choose and to be aware that we are. So tonight I want to have us do, and not talk so much, and have us do two practices in which we'll use and develop the skills of paying attention in order to achieve fulfillment. Okay? But before we do, I want to give a little bit of background, because I like to think when I try to explain mindfulness for myself, I usually will say, why do we do it? What is it? And how do we do it? So why we do it, why we are mindful, is to achieve happiness. And that's really what the Buddha taught. When the Buddha was asked, what do you teach? He said, I teach suffering and the relief of suffering. That's all I teach. But then the Buddha Dharma, which he went on to teach, really does give us life. So it's really both. It's the relief of suffering and it's fulfillment. And we need to have skills in order to pay attention to what we want to get. Okay? So one way to think about the why is happiness, the what is mindfulness? One definition is its 3 skills of attention. Concentration, which is defined as the ability to choose what you pay attention to. The ability to choose. And this is no small thing in a world in which social media is addictive, algorithms are set up to capture our attention. The busyness of life constantly draws us out of ourselves. So in a way, the world we live in is set up for us not to be able to pay attention. And I think I've said in the last series, although this is not fully researched, but there was one study that compared the attention spans of humans, particularly as in the last couple of years, and goldfish. And what do you think had a larger attention span? Goldfish. Goldfish, 12 seconds. Humans are now down to about 9 seconds statistically. And again, that's not research that's been replicated, but it sort of rings true that our ability to pay attention is really being reduced. So that this first skill of concentration, which we'll practice tonight, is that ability to choose what we want to pay attention to enhance our lives. The second skill is clarity. And that's the ability to notice details and to sort out the complication of our minds, basically. And the more we can do that, the more we can actually appreciate what it is. Yourself, if you're going to listen to a piece of music, it's that ability to pay attention and to listen to the different rhythms and notes, the different quality of the music. And that's clarity. And then the last skill, so we call it CC&E, concentration, clarity, and equanimity. Equanimity is the last skill. And it's not a term we use much in English, but the way it's defined is it's the ability to pay attention, but to not push away our experience and not to cling to it. And trust your own experience. When you're fighting with an emotion or you're clinging to a dessert, okay, you don't have tranquility. There's just that constant fighting. Again, it's the suffering that the Buddha taught us that there was a way out of. So equanimity is that ability to just be present and notice what's going on without pushing it away or clinging to it. Now that doesn't mean that in the real world we don't change things. We do have to. But the ability to not complicate our experience by fighting with our own experience, that actually makes us more skillful in changing the world, because we're not bringing all that conflict and chaos of our heads into the world. So the three skills, and I will point it out as we do the meditation, you're going to be paying attention with concentration, choosing what to pay attention to. You're going to notice the quality of your experience, and when your attention drifts, which it will, there will be nobody in here, including me, where I'm paying attention and then I drift off. That ability to come back, not fight with your experience, but gently come back, that's the equanimity. Any questions about that? And then I'm going to shut up and we will actually practice. So, any questions or comments before we do it? Okay, yes.
I've attended a number of your sessions before and I've never asked, what does smell count as?
Great question. Yeah, so feel out is the body, okay? And we include in that just not just sensations, but also smell, touch. So anything to do with the body, physical body, is considered feel. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you smell your favorite food cooking, you can label that feel. You're smelling. Okay. Great question. Any other questions before we? Yes.
Do you have any tips or processes for how you practice equanimity? How to bring yourself back?
Yeah. Well, it's like any other skill. If you said how do you learn to play the guitar? Practice, right? Learn the techniques and then practice. So with equanimity, the most important thing is notice that it's happening. When you're having a thought or an emotion or an experience, notice if you're trying to get rid of it or you're clinging to it. You can feel that. The Buddha called that Vedana. That's one of the links in that link of consciousness. So does that make sense? Just starting to notice it, and then you can let go if you're fighting or clinging, and then just be present. But it is a skill, and the more you practice what we're going to do now, the more it will happen. A very obvious opportunity is the physical sensations in the body. Tonight, we're going to do feel rest right now. You may find that when you tune into your body, you may find discomfort. You might feel cold in here, because it is cold. Or you might feel some tension in your body. And what happens if you feel tension? Let's say you feel tension in your shoulders. What happens if you fight it? Gets worse, right? Yeah, it gets worse. What do? We let go, right? We let go. So the letting go can be, that experience of letting go can be, and again, it's an internal experience. I'm not talking about what we do in the world. I don't want to let go of everything in the world. We have to act. But we start from an experience of being able to be grounded and balanced. Okay. So last week we did feel rest, and let's do that again tonight, because one of the most fulfilling experiences is that ability to be tranquil and restful. So there's at least two ways to experience this mindfulness practice we call feel rest. You can create it or you can find it. Okay. So what you might do right now is grip your fist and just squeeze it. And then let go, equanimity, and just turn it over. Feel the difference. Can you feel that difference? So it's the letting go and the resting, that's the rest. And as I guide the meditation, you will find restful spots in your body. It could be just your hands resting in your lap, feet on the floor, the out breath. Those are all places that you can find rest as well as creative. Okay? So let's go ahead and assume a mindfulness posture. And that may mean just lengthening the spine, relaxing the shoulders, relax the jaw. And you can do this with eyes open or closed, whatever's comfortable for you. And maybe start with a couple deep breaths. And notice the letting go on the out breath. And now bringing your attention to the body, notice if there's any place in the body where there's tension or tightness. You might even scrunch your shoulders up and drop them. And notice the difference. Notice as you drop your shoulders, you can experience rest. So just scanning the body, and notice if there's any areas of tension, and see if you can relax those areas. And as you pay attention to any restful sensations in the body, that's the concentration. You're choosing to pay attention to rest. You might notice on the out breath, there's a letting go. You might bring your attention there. And it can be helpful to point the attention at the sensations by using a label. Very simply, the label rest. And if you want, you can just silently say to yourself in a rhythmic way, the label rest. Rest. Rest, rest. As you feel the restful experience. Now be quiet now and just experience rest. Or create it. As you're paying attention to the restful sensation, you're using the skill of concentration. And the attention will naturally drift to something else, maybe a sound in the room, like my voice, or some other sense experience. When you notice that, just kindly and gently bring your attention back to rest and continue the label rest. Let's do 2 more minutes of feel rest. Before I ring the bell to end the practice, just check in with your body. And sometimes rest can begin to spread throughout the body. And you may actually feel a deepening, a more fulfilling sense of peacefulness or tranquility. And if not, it's okay. But just notice that. So how was that? Anybody like to share what your experience was? Yes?
Yeah, I did feel like the longer I sat in it and surrendered to it, the more it spread, and I felt a deeper sense of peace and relaxation. So
Yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah, and that's important because, again, the busyness of our lives, we have to take some time to just settle in. Great. How about others? How was it? Yes.
I think I overdid it because I kept falling asleep.
Yeah, that's, well, because, we're often sleep deprived or tired, so that's normal. It's Owen, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Owen, how did you know you were falling asleep?
Started kind of just having weird thoughts, right? Almost like dreams. And then
Yeah.
I realized that, like, oh, right, I'm like bring it back.
Yeah.
Back to fresh.
Yeah, and I'm not being a smart aleck by asking that. It's the same thing as what undoubtedly happened for everybody in this room, including me. Did you notice when your attention drifted and you came back? Did anybody not notice that happening? So sleep is the same thing. You noticed you were getting sleepy, and then maybe you came back. So that's the normal experience of even those of us who have been meditating for 50 years, the mind will drift. And it's actually when you notice you're getting sleepy or you're thinking about dinner, whatever it is, and you come back, you keep coming back. You notice you come back. That's strengthening the concentration, and it's developing the equanimity. You're letting go of what it was that distracted you, and you purposely come back. And the neuroscientists call that, it's like a bicep curl for the brain. The more you do it, the more you're training your brain to pay attention. So it's almost like you have to go away and come back in order to do it, like a muscle. Yes?
So I noticed because I had a tooth pulled before I came in there.
Did you really?
Pain, right? But at the same time, I noticed as I was saying rest to that area more, it was actually doing the opposite. You know, it was a fixating on it. So
Yes.
once I redirected the attention away from it, that's when it started to feel the release.
Yes. Yeah. That's really, so did everybody hear that? She had a tooth pulled just before she came here. Bless your heart for coming. But you know, that's a really important part of this whole experience of mindfulness. The more we can pay attention, the more fulfilling our experience is. And you know, I worked for 20 some years at Sharp Healthcare. Last 6 years, my job was to teach this mindfulness, without the Buddhism, of course, but the secular mindfulness. And I worked in the pain program sometimes, teaching people these techniques to deal with chronic pain. Because when you're able to relate to or pay attention to body sensations, the more you can bring concentration, clarity, and equanimity to the experience, even the pain of a tooth that's been pulled, you suffer less. You suffer less. The pain may not go away, but the suffering can be lessened. So this technique of feel rest, what I would urge you to do, use it this week in your life. You know, as you experience, the more you can sit and do it, the longer. You know, try 5 or 10 minutes in your own meditation practice doing this technique. And then you can also do it in the world while you're doing things. You know, if you're in a meeting and it's excruciating, you can't stand the meeting, okay? Try feel rest. It will actually shift your experience of the unpleasant aspects of what's going on. How about others? Anybody else want to share what? Yes.
Well, last week you said something about explore where you feel calm in your body.
Yes.
And I did that regularly, and I noticed what a different feeling, because in the past, people have said, you know, look for anxiety in your body and then work, breathe, deep breathing to get rid of it.
Right.
And looking for the calm made the calm expand.
Yes.
As opposed to the opposite.
Yes.
And I just found it really a great practice.
That's terrific. Well, you know, it's a strategy. Again, I don't have time to talk about all this, but these two examples explain a strategy we have for being mindful. You can either turn your attention to the experience, like the pain, and the more you infuse it with concentration, clarity and equanimity, not fighting the pain, just letting it be there. We call that a turn towards strategy. But you always have the choice to turn away. So if you've got an anxiety, you could focus on something else. In this case, field rest is a great alternative. And you can experience a relief of suffering from that as well. So we always have that choice to turn towards our experience or turn away, as long as we have a technique to do it. Anybody else want to share? Yes.
I've always found meditation to be really challenging. Like, I have a very ADHD brain where I get very distracted, and it's very hard for me to like sit still and not fidget.
Yeah.
And I noticed towards the end I was like having the urge to like get up or like go to the bathroom so that I could like walk around, because I didn't know like how much longer it was going to be. I just was getting really anxious.
Right.
And I challenged myself to just like sit with that discomfort and just stay, and it ended up getting it a little bit easier, and I felt very proud of myself for
Great, absolutely. And you know, again, that points out that it's a skill you can develop. That's why I mention, usually I'll say we're going to do 2 more minutes, because you can bet there are others of us in the room who it's like, I can't stand another minute. But you hang in there, and what you're doing is you just strengthen that bicep curl for the brain. And that is the way, because I too have an ADD brain. I grew up before we had the diagnosis, but I know now I was an ADD child, bright, but I got poor grades because I couldn't pay attention. And in my 20s, I started meditating, 50 years ago. I started meditating because my brain was so whacked, and we didn't have a ADD, attention deficit disorder diagnosis. And what I found is I found relief. Not initially, it was hard. And what you want to do is don't take 20 minutes to try to meditate. Start with 2 minutes. And if that's okay, keep doing it, and then expand it to 3, and then to 4. And again, what the neuroscientists are telling us, it's like a bicep curl for your brain. And in a way, we're all in the same boat. Some of us have less attention spans, but there wasn't anybody in the room who didn't drift, or maybe felt like they had to get up as well. So I want to do a second practice with the time we have. And I think, Owen, you asked this question last week. I think about how do you balance negative emotions? Did you ask that question? Yeah. So when we talk about fulfillment, one thing we know from the neuroscience is that the brain has a negativity bias. Do you know that? The brain has a negativity bias, meaning we default to the negative in our lives. And we know that to be true. That's our experience, if you check it out. Why do you think that is? Why did evolution give us a negativity bias?
To detect threats so that we could
Yep.
survive.
That's right. Yeah, and the joke I make is when our ancestors were in the jungle, it was the ancestor who, when they walked through the jungle and if a leaf rattled, they thought, tiger, I'll get eaten. They ran. But it was the blissed out one who said, they got eaten. And so they're not in our gene pool. In our gene pool is the relative, the ancestor, who every time a leaf rattled, they thought they were going to get killed, and they ran. So we're hypercharged with the ability to pay attention to what's going to hurt us. Thing is, we're not in the jungle anymore, but we live in a psychological jungle. You walk into a room of strangers, and you may right away think, am I going to be safe? Am I going to be criticized? Am I going to... So the brain, you just want to recognize that your brain, my brain, has a negativity bias. Now, the problem is that with fulfillment, we can't be very happy if we go around the world only focused on the negative, then our brain takes us there. So the Buddha taught us nurturing positive states, not because we want to pretend like everything is wonderful, because goodness knows everything is not wonderful in the world. Sometimes we have to have two teeth pulled. But we can practice in order to balance that negativity bias. So answering your question from last week, Owen, we're going to do what's called a feel-good practice tonight. And what I'm going to ask you to do, and you can do it right now to prepare, I'm going to ask you to do a see in. Remember the image in your head? Think of either a person, place, or thing that makes you feel good. It could be your dog's face. Okay, many people, your dog or your cat, that is really a wonderful experience. It could be your favorite place in the world, maybe a place in the forest or at the beach, or it could be a thing. It could be an object, like a statue of the Buddha, for example. So think of something and have the image in your head that makes you feel good. And just concentrate on it. And then the second thing, when we begin the meditation, I'm going to suggest that you do a hear-in, that you come up with a word or phrase that connects you to that object. So let's say you're picturing the beach in Hawaii where you were so relaxed. And the word or phrase might be peace. Or it could be a person that you love. The word could be love. And hear yourself saying that. Remember, we're seeing and we're hearing in. And then when we do the meditation, I'm going to suggest you check in to see if the goodness rises in your body. You can feel it. And before we do, just a little experiment. I thought this was so silly when I was first taught this, but it works. If you put a smile on your face, notice how it feels. Can you feel it? It feels different, right? Even though I may look foolish. But, I can create goodness to balance out the negativity by this practice. So let's go ahead and do it. We're going to do about 6 minutes. So if my ADD brain keeps jumping around, I know that there will be an end, okay? So with it, assume a mindfulness posture, getting comfortable but alert, maybe sitting up straight, that alerts the mind. It's most helpful to close your eyes, but if you're more comfortable with them open, perfectly okay. And now bring to mind that see-in of that image you chose and concentrate on it. When you get distracted, just gently come back to the image of goodness. And now, if you want, add that word or phrase that you chose that connects you to the image. Just softly and gently repeat that word or phrase to yourself herein. So noticing the image and hearing the word or phrase. And when you get distracted, know that coming back to the image and the phrase, you're strengthening your concentration. And now let's add that third element of check into your body and notice if there's any feeling in the body of that goodness or warmth or happiness. If not, it's okay. But just let it be there if it's there. And going back and forth between the image, the phrase, and the feeling. We'll do this for 2 more minutes. You can support the feel good with maybe a slight smile on the face. It cues the brain for positivity. So we just have a couple minutes. Anybody like to share what happened in that experiment, that meditation? Yes, ma'am.
Sure. You mentioned your favorite animal, which is Poncho, my little buddy. And then it made sense to me to imagine Poncho in my favorite place, which is Beaver, Utah, and then eating a sandwich, a peanut butter sandwich. I just put the 3 together, and it just rose up in me, and it felt really good. Yeah.
Wow, perfect, excellent. How about others? Yes.
I think for me, I was doing the act of smiling before I was actually happy, and the more deeper I was into that specific moment and realized that the forced smile turned into an actual smile, and that was really
Fantastic, yeah. That's the feel good in the body, yeah. And again, when we talk about feel in, that's just the emotions that show up in the body, and all emotions do. Yeah, it's too bad we didn't have more time, because if we had another 10 minutes, if you could have stood it, okay, you would have deepened that experience as well. Maybe one more. Anybody else like to share what happened? For anybody, did it not work? So. Okay, Owen. Great. Thanks for being honest. Because the thing is that this, it's like, again, any skill requires practice. And at any one moment, it may or may not occur, but it's important to practice this. So what I want to leave you with tonight is these two meditation techniques we just did are really powerful for creating more fulfillment in our lives. Feel rest, you can do feel rest anywhere you're at, and particularly if you're under stress, and nobody knows you're doing it. You can do it with the eyes open or closed, but you can calm yourself down. And then the feel good practice, nurturing positivity, is really great to develop that as a skill to balance the negativity that we experience in the world, but that we create within our own experience as well. So what I want to suggest is, if you have a daily meditation practice, maybe try these techniques, give them a few minutes to use the instructions, and train your mind for positivity and for fulfillment through rest. And then the second thing is, you can do what we call a micro hit, which is just, it could be 30 seconds or 2 minutes in the world. So you're in terrible traffic, and you're feeling tense, and it comes to a screeching halt. Most of our reaction is when it does. Well, there you sit. Use those 2 minutes to either do feel rest or practice a nurturing positivity, a feel good, and change your experience. The other thing is that there's an app. It's called Bright Mind, bright, like bright lights, Bright Mind. And I think it's free for a week, but it teaches systematically these techniques that I teach here. And I use it every day myself. It's a really good training tool. And you can dial how much time you want to spend. If you only have 10 minutes or 12 minutes, you can do that. But it is really a training tool. So it's called Bright Mind. And it's on Androids, on iPhone. I think it's a week, it's free, and then it's fairly inexpensive as a monthly. So next week, and before our guardian, where's the guardian of the temple? She's going to come in and give us an announcement. But for next week, the third facet of happiness is self-knowledge. So we're going to look at how mindfulness can help us understand and to know ourselves better as well. Okay, well, I think she's not here. She disappeared.